Greetings, greetings, everybody. Yay! If you go outside, you notice that the leaves are turning, the leaves are falling, the air's a little bit chillier. It's fall. It's October. Samhain is around the corner. Samhain is probably the most favorite sabbat of the pagans that I know. This is a time of change, a time of reflection. This is a time to express yourselves more openly because of the Christian holiday Halloween. It is more acceptable to let our inner selves out. Samhain means summer's end. Is the Celtic feast of the dead, when the veil between the worlds is thinnest and departed spirits may return to communicate with the living. Bonfires were lit and blazing straw from the fire was carried through the villages and over the fields. Traditionally celebrated on October 31st, Samhain falls astrology several days later at 15 degrees Scorpio. It is the opposite hinge of the year from Beltane and is the Celtic New Year, making the beginning of the winter half of the year. Also called Third Harvest or Winter's Beginning, this festival has been thinly Christianized as All Saints' Day, with the night before being called All Hallows Mass, or Halloween. Long a favorite holiday for magical folks of all ages, and an occasional for masquerades, pumpkin carving, trick-or-treating. In Mexico, they call it Dia de los Muertos, or the Day of the Dead. In many lands, candles are lit in every room and food and drink are put out for the souls. This is a time to honor our ancestors, remember our dead, and hail our descendants. And the most important element of Samhain Eve is the rite of the Dumb Supper, a meal of underworld foods, mushrooms, nuts, black olives, pork, beans, chocolate, etc., shared in total silence, wherein the spirits of the beloved dead are invited to join the feast and be remembered in honor and love. Some people love to say that it is the evil spirits that come out. No, all spirits come out because the veil is thinnest at this time. There are so many things you can do for Samhain. Spook up your home with Halloween decorations. Carve weird pumpkins, hang ghosts from trees, and throw a costume party for friends. One very special thing you can do at this time is make your altar up to honor your ancestors. Get small photos of departed grandparents or anyone that you love and admire who is no longer living. Frame them nicely, each with a little label, and arrange them on your altar. Use a black altar cloth and candles, black feathers, and a small sand timer, and other items that symbolize death. If you're collecting any small animal bone, skulls or bones, you might display them here. Traditionally, Samhain marked the end of the harvest. In ancient times, when all the crops had been gathered from the fields, farmers needed to determine whether any of their livestock were too weak to survive the winter. The weaker animals were then slaughtered to provide meat for the winter. Thus, Samhain was a somber time when summer and harvest both came to an end and death seemed especially near. One of the interesting superstitions involved with this time was about collecting harvests. It was considered bad luck to harvest anything from the fields after Samhain, because that food left there was considered to belonging to the Pukas. And so you would anger the Pukas if you took their food. I'm going to read a couple excerpts from a book that I absolutely love. If you are interested in following a Celtic path, I highly suggest getting the book Kindling the Celtic Spirit by Mara Freeman. And it is published by Harper Books. This book goes through the Celtic year. It has, obviously then 12 chapters. And it talks about the events that happen in Celtic pagan history. It makes references to sacred animals, to the trees. There's recipes in there, a lot of history. It gives you the names for the various sabbats. It is a wonderful book to have. Now I would like to read you, like I said, it's about 3 or 4 excerpts from this book. Okay, The Feast of Tara. Just as the Celtic day began at night, Samhain may have actually marked the Celtic New Year, for our ancestors knew that from dark silence comes whisperings of new beginnings and the stirring of the seed underground. Certainly in early Ireland, Samhain was the most important of all the 4 great calendar festivals. A great feast was held at Tara every 3rd year, attended by much drinking and feasting. The main purpose seems to have been the renewal of kingship and the kingdom itself, with the 4 principal kings and their people arranged foursquare around the High King, who sat in state at the center. This was of uttermost importance, for outside the walls of Tara, the forces of chaos reigned as the city mounds opened wide and all kinds of otherworld spirits streamed out at the height of their powers on this in-between night that was the 3rd and greatest spirit night of the year. According to one tale, Tara was almost overcome by the evil spirit every Samhain until the arrival of Fionn McCummel. Okay. Now this is from the Fires of Samhain. At the Feast of Tara, the Druids commemorated the start of the new cycle with a sacred fire on the hilltop 12 miles to the northwest of Tara. Lighting fires at this time was continued right up to the present in Ireland and the British Isles. Although different reasons are usually given for doing this, in the 1860s, the Halloween bonfires were so popular in Scotland that one traveler reported seeing 30 fires lighting up on the hillsides all on one night, each surrounded by rings of dancing figures, and a practice that was continued until World War I. Young people and servants lit brands from the fire and ran around the fields and hedges of the house and farm, while the community leaders surrounded parish boundaries with a magic circle of light. Afterwards, the ashes from the fires were sprinkled over the fields to protect them during the winter months, and of course they also improved the soil. The bonfire provided an isle of light within the oncoming tide of winter darkness, keeping away the cold, discomfort, and evil spirits long before electricity illuminated our nights. In Wales, the sinking of the last flame was a signal for all the children present to run as fast as they could home. In many bonfire ceremonies, an effigy is burnt, an echo perhaps of an ancient sacrifices that the early Celts offered up to the gods as Samhain fires. The Cailleach. In Scotland, Samhain ushers in the reign of Cailleach Bia, whom we first met in February as the Hag Queen who rules over the winter season until the return of Bride in early spring. Her name literally means veiled one, an epithet often applied to those who belong to hidden worlds, but that came later to simply mean old wife. She is the winter spirit responsible for the gales and the lash of the northwest, and local fishermen gave her the iconic epithet of Gentle Annie. On the threshold of the dark half of the year, the Cailleach has much to teach us about darkness. Beltane, the other great gateway of the Celtic year, initiated us through light, bringing sunshine and communication. Samhain is the yin to Beltane's yang, the via negativa rather than the via positiva. At Beltane, we learn through relationship. At Samhain, we learn through separating and allowing to die that which is no longer useful or relevant in our lives. Having harvested the kernels of our soul's growth this year, we now begin clearing our inner fields of leftover stalks and stubble. By doing so, we align ourselves with the cosmic cycle of death and rebirth. The inner cauldron, reclaiming. Samhain teaches us about our shadow, all the fears, blind spots, negativity, and unresolved issues about ourselves and life in general that must be recognized, accepted, and reclaimed before we can become whole. Much of the power of Celtic spirituality lies in the willingness to embrace our dark side. Rather than insisting we turn ever toward the light as certain New Age spiritual paths would have us do, the Celtic dark goddess takes us down to bring us face to face with our own hidden darkness. For, as Jung once said, one does not become enlightened by imaginary figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. The Cailleach, the Morrigan, and all hag aspects of the goddess play the role of the dweller on the threshold, the figure who guards the entrance to the inner planes. She is the queen of air and darkness, who embodies our shadow in a fearsome manner. Yet she is not evil herself. She is merely reflecting back to us our own weaknesses, illusions, and fears. If we cannot face our own negativity, we are not ready to proceed further on the spiritual path. But if we can meet the shadow, its formidable appearance dissolves, and we are initiated into deeper truths and realities. I always find that quite inspiring. Samhain is transition. It is a time of reflection. It is a time of completion. So we need to take this Sabbath and we need to do as what I've been talking about. It is a time to celebrate, commemorate, and learn, and remove what we do not need from our lives. So I hope you learned something from this. Maybe it helped you in some manner. So please, everybody, take care. Be at peace.